what's up, YouTube? Welcome to another Storytime Quickies of the Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. Tonight's tale, we're going to be getting into Tale 46, Fowler's Fowl. So get ready, grab your snacks, your blankies, and get comfy because it's time for a quick story time. Tonight's is only going to be 3 pages long, so it's not that long. It'll probably take about 10-15 minutes at most. We're going to probably talk a little bit afterwards. Usually these storytime quickies do not last very long. If you are watching from YouTube, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below if you really liked it and enjoyed the story. It helps with the algorithms. Thank you, thank you, thank you. At the end of the video, there's going to be a little playlist that pops up right over here. You get to check out some of the other stories that we've been reading over the course of the month or two, something like that. It's about 2 months, something like that. We got about 40 plus stories that are going to be popping up right there. So look forward to that. But other than that, let's get into tonight's story, okay? Shall we? All right, and I'm super proud of all you guys out there. All right, keep up the good work. All right, here we go. Tale number 46. There was once a wizard who used to take the form of a poor man and went to houses and begged and caught pretty girls. No one knew where he carried them, for they were never seen again. One day, he appeared before the door of a man who had 3 pretty daughters. He looked like a poor weak beggar and carried a basket on his back, as if he meant to collect charitable gifts in it. He begged for a little food, and when the eldest daughter came out, was just handing him a piece of bread, he barely touched her, and she was forced to jump into his basket. Then he hurried away with long strides and carried her into a dark forest to his house, which stood in the midst of it. Everything in the house was magnificent. He gave her whatever she could possibly desire and said, "My darling, you will certainly be happy with me, for you have everything your heart can wish for." This lasted a few days, and then he said, "I must journey forth and leave you alone for a short time. There are keys to the house. You may go everywhere and look at everything except in one room, which this little key here opens, and I forbid you to go there on pain of death." He likewise gave her an egg and said, "Preserve the egg carefully for me, and carry it continually about with you, or a great misfortune would arise from the loss of it." She took the keys and the egg and promised to obey him in everything. When he was gone, he went all around the house, from the bottom to the top, and examined everything. The rooms shone with silver and gold, and she thought she had never such great splendor. At length she came to the forbidden door. She wished to pass it by, but curiosity let her have no rest. She examined the key. It looked just like any other. She put it in the keyhole and turned it, and the door sprang open. But what did she see when she went in? A great bloody basin stood in the middle of the room, and therein lay human beings, dead and hewn to pieces, and near by was a block of wood, and a gleaming axe lay upon it. She was so terribly alarmed that the egg which she held in her hand fell into the basin. She got it out and washed off the blood, but in vain. It appeared again in a moment. He washed and scrubbed, but she could not get it out. It was not long before the man came back from his journey, and the first thing which he asked for were the key and the egg. She gave them to him, but she trembled as she did so, and he saw at once by the red spots that she had been in the bloody chamber. "Since you have gone into the room against my will," said he, You shall go back into it against your own. Your life is ended. He threw her down, dragged her there by her hair, cut her head off on the block, and hewed her in pieces, so that her blood ran on the ground. Then he threw her into the basin with the rest. Now I will fetch myself the second, said the wizard. And again he went to the house in the shape of a poor man and begged. Then the second daughter brought him a piece of bread. He caught her like the first, by simply touching her, and carried her away. She did not fare better than her sister. She allowed herself to be led away by her curiosity, opened the door of the bloody chamber, looked in, and had to atone for it with her life on the wizard's return. Then he went and brought the third sister, but she was clever and crafty. When he had given her the keys and the egg, and had her left her, he first put the egg away with great care. Then she examined the house, and at last went into the forbidden room. Alas, what did she behold? Both her sisters lay there in the basin, cruelly murdered and cut in pieces. But she began to gather their limbs again, and put them in order: head, body, arms, legs. And when nothing further was wanting, the limbs began to move and unite themselves together, and both the maidens opened their eyes and were once more alive. Then they rejoiced, and kissed and caressed each other. On his arrival, the man at once demanded the keys and the egg, and as he could perceive no trace of any blood on it, he said, "You have stood the test. You shall be my bride." Now he no longer had any power over her, and was forced to do whatever she desired. "Oh, very well," said she. "You shall first take a basket full of gold to my father and mother, and carry it yourself on your back. In the meantime, I will prepare for the wedding." Then she ran to her sisters, whom she had hidden in a little chamber, and said, "The moment has come when I can save you. The wretch shall carry you home again, but as soon as you are at home, send help to me." She put both of them in a basket, and covered them quite over with blood, so that nothing of them was to be seen. Then she called in the wizard and said to him, "Now carry the basket away, but I shall look through my little window and watch to see if you stop on the way to stand or to rest." The wizard raised the basket on his back and went away with it, but it weighed him down so heavily that the perspiration streamed from his face. Then he sat down and wanted to rest a while, but immediately one of the girls in the basket cried, "I am looking through my little window, and I see that you are resting. Will you go on at once?" He thought it was his bride who was calling to him, and got up on his leg again. Once more he was going to sit down, but instantly she cried, "I am looking through my little window, and I see that you are resting. Will you go on directly?" And whenever he stood still, he cried this, and then he was forced to go onwards, until at last, groaning and out of breath, he took the basket with the gold and the two maidens into their parents' house. At home, however, the bride prepared the marriage feast and sent invitations to the friends of the wizard. Then she took a skull with grinning teeth, but some ornaments on it, a wreath of flowers, carried it upstairs to the attic window, let it look out from there. When all was ready, he dipped into a barrel of honey, and then cut the feather bed open and rolled herself in it, until she looked like a wondrous bird, and no one could recognize her. Then she went out of the house, and on her way she met some of the wedding guests, who asked, "Oh, fowler's fowl, how come you here?" "I come from Fitz, the fowler's house quite near." And what may the young bride be doing? From cellar to garret she swept all clean, and now from the windows she's peeping, I ween. At last he met the bridegroom, who was coming slowly back. He, like the others, asked, "O fowler's fowl, how come you here?" "I come from Fitz and Fowler's house quite near." "And what may the young bride be doing?" "From cellar to garrets she's swept all clean, and now from the window she's peeping, I ween." The bridegroom looked up and saw the decked out skull, thought it was his bride, and nodded to her, greeting her kindly. But when he and his guests had all gone into the house, the brothers and kinsmen of the bride, who had been sent to rescue her, arrived. They locked all the doors of the house, that no one might escape, set fire to it, and the wizard and all his crew had to burn. And that ends the story of the Fowler's Fowl. What did you guys think of that story? I thought it was kind of interesting. There was a little bit of like, thrill, a little bit of drama. It was really good. It's almost like that turn of the screw, kind of like horror, classic horror stories that you hear about a lot. Um, I've read a lot of like really good horror stories, particularly around like October time. I love to read, turn of the screw novels and soap opera kind of like novellas. Some of my favorites being like the Yellow Wallpaper. Um, there's quite a few. I could probably name or make a list for the future. There's so many really good ones, man. You'd be surprised, and it's always such good like suspense from these novels. It's the kind of stories that like you enjoy in short story form, because if you have too long of a chapter that is turning the screw little by little, if you put down the book and then pick it back up later, it's not going to have that same effect. But like a novella or like a short story that's like 20 pages, 15 pages, something that you can read in like one night, is so perfect for that kind of like story. Or even like a 30 page, like it's so perfect because you don't want to put down the book. You're so close to the end, and like little by little the suspense is just picking up. There's so much more tension, so that when you get to that ending, the tension just, you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And it's very similar. This doesn't build the tension to that point quite a bit, but it's like a very slow burn. At the beginning you have this mysterious character who's like stealing these daughters away and taking them to his home, and he's looking for a bride, and each one keeps on messing up and getting killed, or murdered by him. And then the third one, being clever, finds a way to trick him. It's such a good story. I like this. Not necessarily anything morality wise, other than, I guess it's probably like the Stranger thing, maybe, I guess, Stranger Danger. But like in this, it's not only the wizard who has to pay for his consequences, it's his entire family, kin, and friends, like the entire guests and stuff, that get burned alive by this one family. Interesting enough, though. Very interesting. Yeah, I liked it. That was a great story. I liked it a lot. I could see that um being adapted into like a much longer story, you know? As far as some of these, I've been noticing a lot of repeating stories in this quite a bit. So who knows if we might actually run into like a longer version of that story somewhere down the line. We have a lot of stories. We have like somewhere close to like 150 more stories to go, right? Because it's like about a 200 tales in this book, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yes, a little bit over 200, a little bit over 200 tales, plus 10 legends. So 200 tales, man. And I like that. I kind of really like the stories so far that aren't very religious, I find, like, yeah, there's some tales that are like kind of interesting because they're like about God and stuff like that, and morality is like pretty heavy in them, and consequences weigh really heavily in those tales. But not all of them are hitting as hard as I thought they were going to be. I'm kind of enjoying a lot of these tales that like they kind of have a broader perspective. Like the last tale, Godfather Death, that like literally was dealing with like the morality of like the gods and how, God is not even a very ethical person, in any sense. He's much more comparable with like the devil, who is always constantly deceiving, because God is always in some senses very unequal in how he dishes out punishments or rewards. And that story is all about how death is the fairest of them all in every way, because uh he takes unconditionally, and it's very, very surprising. I liked it a lot. And I'm starting to like these stories more and more. We still have over 150 tales to go through. So we have way, way more. And to think, this isn't all the Grimm's tales, I think. It says complete fairy tales, but like I think there are probably way more Grimm's tales out there. And there's actually the book that I mentioned before about the other tales that are included from international. This is solely the Grimm's fairy tales are solely centered around Germany, Europe and stuff like that, because that's where like a lot of these stories were collected, and the Grimm's brothers were originally from. But these same stories also occurred in other places as well. So, like the Cinderella story, there's a version of that that's actually from China. There's other Cinderella stories that are from Persia. So, like, it's quite interesting to see how all these tales differ from one another and how they're very similar as well. The book that I have has a dissertation essay that compares the two uh, in a in different ways, and compares how the trade or the ways that the different civilizations communicated around that time um, really changed some of these stories. Like the Cinderella story from China and from Persia or Saudi Arabia, it's one of the two, because um, it's very kind of like coded with sultans and stuff like that. But it's very interesting how they differ. And it's a good read. I can't, sadly I can't read from that book because it is copywritten. I could read the old tales, so I could probably read like the Chinese version, the Persian version of Cinderella and stuff like that. I think you guys would definitely enjoy that. There's actually separate versions of the Little Mermaid as well. Little Mermaid has a couple different variations, and so does Beauty and the Beast. And I've mentioned this before at the start of us starting up the Grimm's fairy tales for like the very first or second episode. I mentioned that Beauty and the Beast was one of my favorite stories in that book. That book, it was actually the first story when I was a kid that like I actually, had felt that kind of emotion. It brought like a little bit of a tear, and it got me really into reading at that time. Because before that, growing up, I grew up in a Spanish household. I had a lot of difficulties learning English in elementary, so much so that by fourth grade, I had to be placed into tutoring classes to help me uh, with reading comprehension a lot. And one of the main books that I attribute to like really helping me learn was the original Harry Potter series. I mean, Harry Potter gets a really bad rap right now because of like its authors' takes and stuff like that. And I completely understand. I don't necessarily agree with their point of views, but those books kind of like helped me get into reading. And then after Harry Potter, I started reading Lord of the Rings. I started reading like old school fairy tale stuff. I loved Beauty and the Beast back then. It was one of my favorite novelizations. And also how ironic it was that uh one of my favorite short story novelizations uh also has a had such a huge impact on the animation industry at the time. For like the old school Disney stuff was at the time that Beauty and the Beast was put out, they were doing like huge leaps in technology when it came to animation. So at that time they were working a lot on like CGI backgrounds or CG backgrounds so that it alleviated a lot of work off of like the 2D animators because at the time everything was hand drawn. If you had backgrounds that had movement, like that whole ballroom scene of Beauty and the Beast, that had kind of like 3D effects to it, was all done computer generated. Uh, and that was just like through the technological leaps that we were going through at the time through animation. Disney has this whole like documentary based around it too that you could probably watch on Disney Plus. Honestly, people rag on Disney Plus a lot. They're always like, there's not any like content on there, there's nothing good, everything's just like the old school animation. Dude, watch some of the old school animation stuff. Honestly, I would love to do a watch party of Disney stuff if I didn't get fucking, flagged automatically. I might try it. I might try it. I'll fucking do a Disney movie stream one of these days, like watch party. Um hell, maybe even this Friday. If Lazy doesn't jump on, I might do a watch party this Friday. We'll watch like a old school Disney movie. Shit, we could probably do like Beauty and the Beast maybe, since it's one of my favorites. But the documentaries on Disney Plus are amazing. If you watch any of the documentaries about the what was the name of the effects studio that did Star Wars back in the day? I think the documentary is called like Light and Magic or something like that. Amazing documentary. Amazing documentary of just like how that effects company started up and how they created Star Wars at the time, A New Hope. Amazing, amazing interviews in that as well. They talk about their experiences. And if you enjoy that too, there's there's actually a couple of people on YouTube that you could check out that love to do streaming. Let me see if he still does like live stuff. So yeah, okay, so here it is. So one person who loves to talk about this a lot, and I sometimes watch his lives every so often because he's so interesting when he does his lives, is Adam Savage. So his YouTube is Adam Savage's Tested. Amazing, amazing stuff though. And he talks about this a lot. He talks about like the effects studios quite a bit. Star Wars effects studio. So no, it's not Hasbro. Why does Hasbro pop up when you type in Star Wars effects studio? Uh, but Light and Magic has a lot of really cool episodes in it though. So Academy Award nominated filmmaker, yeah, adventures, curtains of industrial light and magic, special visual effects, animation. So it covers like a lot of different aspects of the industry quite a bit. Camera over here. It's pretty cool. Light and Magic is the name of the documentary. Really fucking cool though. So it's got a 60%, but overall, really, really interesting. They go over different studios in every episode. So you see, this is for the Star Wars. Then they talk more about Star Wars. Uh, t- oh, that's what it was called. It was literally ILM, yeah, Industrial Light Magic, if I'm not mistaken. It's changed now. I think that they've definitely changed. For fifth episode, they start talking about Willow. No more pretending dinosaurs. So Steven Spielberg, and I think this was like the revolutionary effects of like Jurassic Park as well, which is one of the main reasons why I got back into watching and reading the Jurassic Park series. Because after watching this documentary, I was like, holy shit! I didn't realize how huge of a technological leap Jurassic Park was at the time for special effects. Like, when we were kids, we realized it a lot more because they were like, animatronics? Holy shit, they're so lifelike. You know, you would hear like all your parents and like your adult like siblings talking about this, and they're like, it looks almost real. But like as a kid, you don't register that. But like this movie came out in the fucking late 90s, man. Late 90s, Jurassic Park. Like, think back far. We still had fucking Walkmans around that time. We had CD players. Like, Zunes were barely coming out. That's how huge of a leap this was for movies. And I think this documentary actually it highlights that very, very well. Very well. Like, the leap from the 1995 to like 2010 is just a phenomenal growth of technology, nonstop. It's nonstop, and it's so fucking cool to see because literally people that grew up in like when I was born. So I was born in the like early 90s. So we've seen the most technological like change over our lifetime than most of the kids that were born in like 2010. Like some of the kids in 2010 have just like they've grown up with like some cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. There's like advancements being made, but like not the technological leaps that we've had. We went from classic Game Boy to 3DS to now Switch. We experienced that, all right? They don't understand that, all right? Oh, but when I try to describe that, oh god, I'm still recording. This is probably gonna be on YouTube, so yeah, you guys get that treat, all right? Um, hey, what's up, Jonah? Yo, classic Game Boy? Yeah. We're talking a little bit about just like the technological leaps that we've had over the years, man. I'm gonna be ending this recording for the Storytime Quickies. If you're watching from YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. There should be a playlist that's popping up somewhere right over here, this side. It goes to the rest of the Storytime Quickies. You can check that out over there. Follow my channel as well. It should be popping up somewhere over here on the YouTube channel or YouTube video. I will catch you for the next Storytime Quickie. All right, later.